In a world full of noise and endless distractions, the hardest thing to find is clarity. Here, we uncover the ideas, tools, and stories that help you focus on what truly matters so that you can live and work with purpose. I'm Stuart Hislop, and this is The One Thing Guy. Our journey in life has been one that for all of us is extremely memorable. It's one that's got highs, it's got ones that's got lows. But let me ask you this question. What if the life that you're living right now is not really the life that you wanted to live? Call it 5 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe even 2 months ago. And it was all because of one life-changing moment. And what if that one life-changing moment was that you actually refused to quit? Just imagine where your life would be today. If you had come up with this grand idea, this is the goal that I wanted to achieve, this is what I wanted to do in my life, and you went through it, but you didn't quit. You just carried on doing it. You went through the hard times. You went through those troughs, and you actually just came out to the end where you are right now. How different would your life look like? Well, I know for many people, when I've sat down and had this conversation, the biggest thing that comes out is, but Stuart, I actually struggle to almost follow through. I have this great idea. I've got huge amounts of excitement. I share it with friends. But that follow through, suddenly it just comes to an end. And the big truth around this is you're not alone. This is something that happens with each and every one of us. Why? Why is it that it happens? Well, that's exactly what I want to dig into today. I want to go through some very simple steps that can actually help you to overcome that point where you just want to give up. It's going to be this mindset of just saying, I'm going to refuse to give up. I'm going to push through. Because when you do push through, you actually start to actually learn from those troughs. You start to build more courage. You actually start to build more skills. But one thing that's very, very clear when I speak to clients, you become more aware of your weaknesses. And once you start converting those weaknesses into strengths, suddenly that path and that journey that lies ahead almost goes on autopilot and becomes easier. And that's exactly what I want to get you to. I want to get you to that point where when you come up with a great idea, when you have a goal that you want to achieve in the future, you don't hit one of those troughs and then just give up. You actually go, hey, I know exactly what this is. I know exactly what to do. And you turn that trough into a rise. You actually start getting that excitement again and you start moving forward. Now, when you can do that on an ongoing basis, you're going to see how everything transforms around you. So, what and how do we do it? Well, I will say, when I started to break all this down as a coach, and as a coach, what we do is we take a concept, we take a problem, and we actually break it down into very small components. We reverse engineer it, and we look at it in a holistic way. We go up to 10,000 feet. I look down at it, and I start seeing all these different common elements. And then ultimately, we start piecing it together to create something that you can actually do. Now, option one is you actually go out and you get somebody like a psychologist to actually have this little clock in front of you, put you under hypnotism and say, you're never going to find fear ever again. You're only going to find excitement. Well, that's one option. But I don't think all of you want to try that option. It might be a quick fix, but how long will it actually last? What I want to share with you is something that you can do by yourself. In fact, you can actually start doing it right after the session. It's something that can be implemented in such an easy way. And it's 5 simple steps. So I took everything, I broke it down, I reversed engineered it, and I started having a look at it. Now, I also started looking at reflections. Why? Well, I'm also a human being. I've also gone through this journey where I've got, I just need to quit. I just want to give up. It's not working. And then 2 years later, I go, I wish I'd never done that. So I've looked at all of these components, and I've also looked at areas where I just said, I'm not going to quit. What did I do? What do my clients have done in those particular situations? And these are the 5 steps that I want to share with you. The very first one is actually to accept that we are human beings. We need to accept that we have an emotional cycle, all right, in our life. So let's give you the scenario of how this emotional cycle works. Well, it starts like this. The emotional cycle is, hey, I've got a great idea. Oh, I've got a goal. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of enthusiasm. I share it with my friends, my family. They get excited. So that emotion is at the highest level. I start on this particular journey with all this excitement. And as I'm going through this particular journey, my friends and my family, well, they carry on with their own life. So their support structure to keep that motivation as high as possible slowly starts to decrease over time because they're interested in their goals and their aspirations. Then suddenly there's a challenge that comes ahead. Suddenly there's a difficulty. I'm not sure how to do this. Now you suddenly start to feel alone. And that little cycle starts to go lower and lower and lower. And then what happens is you almost get into the valley of despair. I love that term. The valley of, I don't really love it, but the valley of despair. It's the point where we find most people give up. So we need to identify when we start getting into this valley of despair, we need to realize one clear point. The valley of despair is not that you're failing. That's what we seem to realize. We seem to realize when it's going down that we're failing. No, we're not failing. We're actually in a learning curve. We're learning a new skill. We're learning some new knowledge. And it's that learning process that delays it slightly. And we need to be fully aware of this emotional cycle. We need to be aware that as soon as things start to feel like we're going down this valley, it's not the give up moment. In fact, it should be a new revived excitement moment. Why? Well, if you think about this, after every valley is a rise. It's not an easy rise, but it's a rise. And generally speaking, that rise, when you get to the top, the peak is always higher than the peak that you had prior. So when you can start to anticipate this emotional cycle that's going to be coming in front of you, you can predict, hey, by the way, this is going to be my psychological checkpoint. When I'm hitting there, it's not to give up. It's not to give up at all. In fact, what it's to do, it's to actually motivate you and say, right, let me push through this. I don't want to give up, but you need to be aware of it. You see, when it catches you on the fly, that is when you throw in the towel. Oh my gosh, it's too hard. Oh my gosh, nobody wants this. Oh my gosh, I need to just leave it and go and do something else. Or the worst of it, you know what? I need to take a break. I won't do it for today. I won't do it for this week. I won't do it for this month. I'll just take a break. I will try and re-energize myself and then I'll go forward. And the problem with that is when you take that option, it's not that you're taking a break for a small period. You actually take a break for life out of that particular goal or that particular ambition. So the first is you need to anticipate these emotional cycles. You're a human being. It will go to those valleys of despair. But when you're there, start looking at that support, getting the skills, getting the knowledge to start kicking you back up. The second one, and this is one that I do pretty much all the time. The second one is actually build a survival kit. All right. And that survival kit helps you when you're in that valley of despair. Now, what is a survival kit? Well, it goes like this. It's such a simple process. When you come up with a concept, with an idea, that excitement level is at the highest. You just want to achieve it. And when that excitement level is at the highest, right in the beginning, I want you to write a letter to your future self. I want you to map the benefits of this thought, this idea, this goal, this ambition that you're wanting to do. I want you to create a vision that will actually almost give you this feedback of going, hey, I need to actually continue. You see, when your excitement's at the top, you can express yourself in a very different way. You can probably write 2 or 3 pages, but it's so important for you to actually put it down. And the big reason for it, and the question that comes in, so why write it? Well, why is actually the answer. The why becomes the purpose. It becomes the fuel to actually get you going forward. You see, when you write a letter to your future self with all that level of excitement, and when you hit that valley of despair, all you do is you pick up that letter, you read that letter, and it reminds you why you started. And when you start to read that letter of why you actually started this particular journey, it actually starts to rekindle this energy, and you'll find that you'll get out of that valley of despair much quicker. The problem that we have is when we don't write a letter, we've got nothing to rely on. We've got nothing to give us that self-motivation to kick us back into gear. We've got to rely on ourselves. So what do? That is tip number 2. You've got to write that future letter to yourself and just explain how amazing it is. Just put that down into words and use that as this little fuel and motivation. It's the big why that actually comes out. Now the third one is one that becomes more of a challenge, and it's an area that I work with a lot of my clients on, and it's actually to look at your environment. Because in your particular environment, you are conducive to certain habits. You've got good habits and you've got bad habits. And the problem that we have and the problem that we face in our environment is it automatically connects us back to those bad habits on an ongoing basis. Now, if those bad habits could actually prevent you from achieving the goal, the ambition of what you're wanting to do, you need to change that habit. But the problem is, we push all that effort into trying to change these bad habits, but the environment doesn't change. So the environment could be, maybe it's a selection of friends. It could be friends that go, hey, no, you don't need to do this. Come and join us. We're going to go out. And that's breaking on a particular habit. It could be an environment that really doesn't have that energy that gets you going. In fact, it's an energy where you'd rather just sit down and turn the TV on and go, let me just watch one episode, which becomes 10 episodes, which becomes a binge watch. Start looking at your environment, and you need to design your environment that fits this journey that you're going ahead. So how do you do that? Well, it's quite simple. You see, you've written this future letter to yourself. You've actually reflected what it looks like. Now all you start to do is add those components of what does that environment look like? What does the support look like in that environment? When you can clearly define that, you start reflecting on your environment where you are right now. And then you can start making those changes to those environments so that it starts to support this journey that you go ahead. You see, a key point here is we want the willpower to carry on. But I can tell you something. Structure beats willpower. If you've got that environment that is structurally designed to support you, to uplift you, it will beat the willpower that you need to continue. You'll walk into that environment and it will on its own give you inspiration and motivation to say, I'm ready to actually go ahead. And this is such an important part because so too often we put all the time, all the efforts into going forward, but we keep going back to that same environment that just trips us up every single time. And in fact, when I've worked with so many clients, we've looked at the environment, and just by changing the environment, suddenly everything starts to become, I would say not easier or simpler, but everything starts to fall into place. Suddenly the stress level starts to go. Those valleys of despair become fewer and fewer, and it's higher levels of motivation that actually come out. So have a look at the environment. What's creating that friction? What is actually preventing you from going forward? Now, the fourth one, and it's so important as a coach when we're working with goals, one of the key areas on a particular goal is to make sure that it's time bound. So we want to achieve a goal. We don't just say, hey, I want to buy a new car, or hey, I want to lose weight. We actually say, I want to buy a new car by this month of this year. I want to lose weight by this particular period. You see, when we set ourselves a time-bound date, it puts a little bit of pressure on us to actually achieve it. That's on goals. Well, the same applies when we're actually going forward in life. We need to make sure that we commit to X amount of days. We commit to X amount of weeks or months, which means that commitment to ourselves means that we're not going to say, okay, I'm 2 weeks in, I need to give up. So let me break this down for you. You set yourself a task. You wanting to do a certain, whatever it might be, going for a run. You want to run a marathon. And what you're wanting to do is you want to train and do X amount of distance every single day. And that becomes hard. That becomes tight. But what you're actually doing is you could go out and then say, you know what, I'm a little bit tired today. I'm going to take a break. Remember that break. 1 day, could be 1 week, 1 month, and then you forget about it. But what you do instead is you give yourself a commitment letter. You commit, and we know that it takes 66 days on average to create a habit, something that you can go on that it becomes autonomous. But you can actually set yourself, you know what? I want to commit for the next 100 days, or maybe even longer. I will not quit. I will commit, even if it is a bad day. I will carry on pushing through. You see, this level of commitment to yourself is extremely important, but you need to make sure that you're actually tracking it. You need to make sure that you're not cheating around it. So when you're doing things like this, you actually say to friends and family, hey, by the way, for the next 100 days, I am committed to doing this, and I want you to hold me accountable to it. You can also use those tracking tables where when you're actually doing it, you mark it off. Did you do it today? Yes, I did. And you cross it off. You need to make sure that you commit that you will not give up and have it for 100 days. You see, that's going to get rid of those troughs of despair. You will actually go forward. Those valleys that are at the bottom, you're actually going, I can't commit. I can't quit. I've committed that I will push through it. And once you push through it, suddenly when you get to the other side, you're going to go, thank goodness. I am so glad I did not quit. So set yourself a fixed time horizon and say, I am not going to quit after these days. It can't be something that's just inside of you where you say, I'm going to have that willpower not to quit. No. Have that as something that you can be held accountable to as you're going through. And then finally, and I share this all the time, and I actually went through to look at a metaphor that I could actually use to almost explain the fifth one. And I couldn't find one that was true and fit into this particular session or this episode. But what I did see was something that's so relevant to all of us. We actually need to measure our successes like breadcrumbs. I know you're looking at me and going, like what? Like breadcrumbs. Well, think of it this way. You see, if you pick up one little breadcrumb and you eat it, it's not going to fulfill you. In fact, it's probably going to irritate you because it's going to get stuck in your gums and you're going to find it hard to actually swallow. And it's not going to make any impact. But if you continue and you pick up a breadcrumb every single day for a year and you have 365 breadcrumbs and you put that together, that creates a meal. That's something that could satisfy you. And this is exactly what we're starting to look at. You see, every day we need to reflect on these micro successes, these breadcrumb of successes, because over time they are going to start getting bigger and bigger. They're going to start to accumulate into something that becomes, wow, that actually fulfills my appetite. So make sure that when you're going through, you are reflecting on all of these particular successes. And it could be something small. It could be a small win, something that you've done and it was like, oh, that was so cool. And you tick it off. Make a note of it. It could be something where you've made a slight progress. Hey, I couldn't get this particular oh, wow, I've actually managed to complete this particular project. It could also be early signs whereby, hey, we're trying to get a new client and we're battling to get in touch with them. And then suddenly there's an email, there's a message that comes back. Hey, we're actually away, but we can talk in the new year. You see, these are small signals, small signs, small successes, and we need to actually put them together. A question that I sit down with a lot of the clients, especially when it comes to the end of the year. There's 365 days in the year. I want you to tell me, give me 365 successes that you've had this year, because every single day you are having a success. And that challenge is quite difficult. It's quite difficult to remember 365 of them. But what if every single day, all you did was just write down one success? On a calendar, you could take a block calendar, and every single day, just go to that block and just write down that one little success on that calendar. When we come to the end of the year and I ask you the question, there's 365 days in the year, tell me your successes. I can tell you, you can tell me a journey, you can tell me a story. On January 1st, I had this. January 2nd, I had this. As you start going through this and start sharing those successes, start reflecting on those successes, you suddenly start to realize that you are a success and that the journey that you're going on is actually moving forward. And that little valley of despair that you had halfway through the year was in fact not related to anything else, but was just an environmental factor that happened. Or maybe you were feeling ill and you've actually gone through this particular journey. And at the end, guess what? You didn't give up, because you set that timeline that you will not commit to stopping. You will just carry on. You're not going to quit. So when you go through these 5 very simple steps, what you're going to find is it's something that you can do. When you're aware that you're going to get those emotional troughs, if you're writing that letter to give you that inspiration, to motivate you, and that's that future dated letter, it really helps you to go through. You look at that environment to make sure that that environment is not the one that's actually preventing you and making you wanting to quit. Make sure that you're actually committed to X amount of days where you're not going to quit at all. And then the 5th one, just make sure that you're remembering those successes. You remember, it's those small things that makes a big, big impact. Now, when I was looking through this particular episode, I was looking for a quote to end. And there was a quote by an unknown person, and it goes like this: change feels hardest right before it becomes inevitable. Change feels hardest right before it becomes inevitable. Think about that and think about the journey that you're going to go forward. I want you to carry on. I don't want you to quit, because when that change does feel hard, guess what? It is going to be hard. But if you push through it, it's going to be easier on the other side.
You've been listening to The One Thing Guy. Remember, when you focus on what matters most, everything changes. See you next time.